Can believe it, we started The Talk, a hard conversation about race in America, almost 2 years ago. And yes, we are still talking. Recently, we gathered some of the original members of the Talk series, and we invited others to join the conversation. Inspired by Antonia Travis and Marty Mayer, two of the unlikeliest of people who have formed an amazing friendship. Now, as this group met this week, we watched The Talk turn into a conversation that expanded beyond the bias and microaggressions, but how others can take this information and talk about it in their own homes. It was just one of the many topics we touched on as we sat around and talked for an hour or so. Here's a quick preview.
So one thing that struck me with the video of The Talk when I watched it before and I watched it again is, I have a 10-year-old and 8-year-old white kids. And so my conversation, my talk with my children is not the same, but what kind of talk should I be having with my 10-year-old boy that, his 10-year-old black friend might be having at home? And so while I can't change the overall landscape right now on my own, what do I do within my house besides not creating separations for him and for my daughter?
Have that conversation with him as far as part of being an ally versus being divisive. Just as long as you're keeping that conversation going with your children, it's more fruitful that way than to not have that conversation at all.
How do you exactly explain and get maybe a child that's under 13 to understand what racism is and get them to see, how do you get a child to understand that?
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's ever counterproductive, and that's something that Casimo and watching the first talk, part of the Talk series, the conversations, and your kids are your babies, still. So y'all have had those conversations or have started to have those conversations already, right?
Even when we think about the LGBTQ community, like I remember my son he's almost 2. He picked up her purse and she said, "You don't wear a purse." And I said, "He doesn't wear a purse, but he's picking it up just to play with it." And I said, "However, if you see a young boy in your class that picks up something that's girlish, it's probably best not to make that comment." And I actually had that with her, and she's almost 3. And I explained to her why. Because some children may want to pick up that purse because they like purses. Right. Do you get what I'm saying? It's shifting how you communicate to them, right.
My son is very inquisitive. He's knocked out sleep right now, but he's a very inquisitive child. He likes to ask questions. He likes to ask the why. And sometimes mommy doesn't always know why, but together we search for that why. But I do have, that conversation. He asks, he'll see someone that's different from him. He'll ask those questions. And it's more so age appropriate to where his cognitiveness can catch on to it and can grasp a hold on it. So I appreciate and I love the way that you taught her in a sense of appreciating someone for who they are and not making it a big deal. Right.
And being age appropriate doesn't mean just completely shutting it off, because they're going to, I think the approach when some people don't know how to have the conversation is to not have the conversation at all, until it completely slaps them in the face, and here they are years later and they have no idea what to do or how to approach this because they haven't. So I think obviously by age it changed and the conversation evolves into a different way that you have it. A teenager is not going to understand a 10-year-old is not going to understand what a 16-year-old understands.
I think exposure is big. How can you imagine yourself doing something if you've never been exposed to it? Mm-hmm. You can't. If you've never seen it, if you've never experienced it, if you've never been exposed to it, it's pretty difficult to think that, oh, I could do that, or I could do this, or I could do that. And I think exposure is the key to all of this. If my child is old enough to experience racism, your child is old enough to learn about it. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that statement.
That is true.
Mm-hmm.
I take moments like this and I use who I am in my community and to my my immediate community, and I take that, like he said, it may seem small, but I know people who are connected to me, who rely on me, who view me in such a manner to where I can use that, and where we can have these conversations. I think exposure is everything.
Well, over this month, we will share more and more of our conversations, because that conversation went on for a little bit of a while, a little over an hour and a half. We'll have more of those conversations on Eyewitness News at 10. In the meantime, you can always go to our WWL YouTube page to watch the entire talk series.